The air hung heavy in the room, thick with the scent of antiseptic and unspoken fear. A thin sheet, barely rising and falling, was the only indication of life left in the frail body beneath. John's chest, once broad and strong, now struggled to draw air. His breaths came in ragged gasps, each one shallower than the last. Around his bed, family gathered, their faces etched with worry and grief. His wife, Mary, held his hand, her touch gentle despite the tremor that ran through her.
"I'm here, John."
Their children, Sarah and David, stood close by, tears streaming silently down their faces. They clung to each other, seeking solace in their shared sorrow.
"We love you, Dad, always."
In those final moments, as the world outside faded away, a sense of peace settled over John. His eyes, though clouded with age, seemed to focus on something beyond the confines of the room. A faint smile touched his lips, and for a fleeting moment, the lines of worry on his face disappeared, replaced by an expression of pure serenity. A warmth spread through John's chest, pushing back the cold that had been creeping in. He looked up, his eyes widening in surprise. Standing before him were figures he hadn't seen in years, their faces etched in his memory.
"Mom, Dad?"
His parents, their smiles as warm and welcoming as he remembered, reached out to him. His brother, gone too soon in a tragic accident, stood beside them, his youthful energy radiating outwards. John's heart ached with a bittersweet joy he hadn't felt in years. These were his people, the ones who had shaped his life, their love for him as strong in death as it had been in life.
"How can this be?"
Confusion flickered across John's face as he tried to reconcile the impossible sight before him with the knowledge that he was nearing the end. His brow furrowed, a question forming on his lips. But before he could speak, his mother spoke, her voice soft and filled with love.
"It's all right, John. It's time to come home."
A gentle tug at John's awareness signaled that his time in the world of the living was coming to an end. His physical body, weary from a life well lived, began to feel distant, like a heavy coat he was finally allowed to shed. As he drifted further away, he became aware of a soft, ethereal light emanating from somewhere above. It beckoned him, promising peace and reunion, but a part of him hesitated.
"Mary."
He looked back at Mary, his beloved wife, her hand still clinging to his, her touch a lifeline he was reluctant to let go of. He saw the pain etched on her face, the love that shone through her tears, and his heart ached at the thought of leaving her behind.
"I love you, John, always."
The light pulsed, understanding his hesitation. It swirled around him, a comforting presence rather than a demanding force. He realized he wasn't being pulled away, but guided, given the time he needed to say a silent goodbye. He focused his remaining energy on his family, sending them a wave of love, a promise whispered on the wind.
John's grip on Mary's hand slackened. His breathing, shallow for the past few hours, ceased altogether. The once bright spark in his eyes dimmed, leaving behind a peaceful emptiness that spoke of a life that had reached its natural conclusion.
The machines that had been monitoring his vital signs fell silent, their monotonous beeping replaced by a chilling quiet. Mary, her hand still clasped around his, felt the warmth of his touch fade until only coldness remained.
A choked sob escaped her lips as the reality of his passing crashed over her. Beside her, Sarah and David crumpled, their faces buried in their hands as they gave in to their grief.
The room, once filled with the sounds of struggle and whispered prayers, was now shrouded in silence. The air, thick with the weight of sorrow, seemed to press down on them, a physical manifestation of their loss. Even as their world crumbled around them, the love they shared with John remained, a beacon in the darkness of their grief. As John drifted further from the world he knew, the tunnel of light grew closer. He found himself bathed in its warmth, a sense of peace washing over him, erasing the pain and weariness he had carried for so long. The figures of his loved ones stood at the end of the tunnel, their smiles beckoning him forward.
But before he could reach them, a new figure stepped into the light. Tall and cloaked, its features obscured by the brilliance surrounding it, the figure radiated an aura of quiet authority. John felt no fear, only curiosity. This being, he sensed, was not here to judge, but to guide.
You have a choice to make. You can move towards the light, towards peace and reunion, or you can stay, linger on the edges and watch over those you love.
The choice was his, a final act of free will before he crossed the threshold into whatever lay beyond. John's gaze flickered back towards his family. He saw their grief, felt the raw agony of their loss, and his heart ached for them. The urge to stay, to watch over them, to offer them comfort in their time of need was almost overwhelming. But then he remembered the peace he felt in the presence of the light, the joy of being reunited with those he had lost.
He knew that lingering on the fringes of their lives would only prolong their pain, prevent them from moving on. He had to trust that they would find their own way, that the love they shared would sustain them. With a final, lingering look at his family, John turned towards the light.
As he stepped into the embrace of the light, a wave of peace washed over him, erasing the last vestiges of his earthly worries. He knew, with a certainty that went beyond words, that he was home. And in that moment of perfect understanding, a message, imbued with all the love he held for them, echoed back to the world of the living.
Let me go and know that I am always with you.
In the hospital room, a sense of calm settled over the grieving family. They didn't understand how.